Alright, so welcome to our video blog for our group. Try this again. Been a couple tries, but we'll see if this one works out for us. So what we wanted to do with our video blog was kind of take our blog subjects, which are our athletes at different levels, and kind of relate their situations back to what we have been learning about in class, about the ethical concepts of teleontologies and deontologies, and also kind of take each of our subjects through the value analysis process to kind of get a better understanding of what their thinking and reasoning was and what their values and interests were, and why they decided to act the way they did. So what we've got are two college athlete subjects. One's just a regular Division I athlete, and the other a Boston College basketball player that was featured on ESPN's 30 for 30 playing for the Mob. One of the professional athletes comes from the MLB, a pretty famous subject, being Pete Rose. And then we look at the situation with the NFL deciding to relocate the Raiders to Las Vegas and what effects or implications that could have on the gambling community there in Las Vegas. So there we go. So we're just going to dive straight into it and kind of figure out what levels of sports that gambling is prevalent. And the answer to that question is pretty much every level. We've got youth sports listed here, and we didn't have an example of that in our blog because it's probably the most underrepresented level that we chose to explore. Like I said earlier, we have two examples of college athletes and two examples of professional athletes, or in the NFL's case, situation to where gambling could affect what goes on in the organization. So the first level we're gonna zoom in on here is youth sports. Like I said a little earlier, we didn't have any examples of that in our blog, but it does happen, and it is prevalent at that level. Obviously not in the case of the children, because they haven't really developed moral or ethical reasoning to that level just yet. So in their case, they're deontological. They're playing for the love of the game. They show good sportsmanship. They just play because it's fun. But adults are the ones making the side bets, believe it or not. Their views are teleological, as they are serving their own interest and just trying to make a buck off a child's game. It's kind of ridiculous, but it does happen, and that is a prime example of egoism. So it's at this point I kind of want to put this value analysis slide in here and kind of talk about that a little bit more, because after youth sports is kind of when an individual begins to realize the consequences of his actions and can begin to weigh and rank different values or interests that are their own personal values and interests, and they can act according to the highest ranked interest, and in which case is not always what you may think it would be, because in some of these situations we're going to look at, there are different conflicting interests and values that pose some ethical problems. So we're going to start with a college athlete and kind of take them through this value analysis process. Alright, our first subject is going to be just a regular Joe Division I athlete, not really a superstar, just kind of, blends in with the pack, with the rest of the athletes. Maybe someone not on one of the high-profile teams like basketball or football, but someone who's right in the middle. It's pretty well documented in the NCAA that the athletes are not compensated to what they think they should be compensated. That's to say, they don't gain any disposable income from the NCAA. I guess the way they're compensated is through scholarships, housing, other things of that nature. So at this point, that athlete has to rank his values and interests between money and following the rules that the NCAA has set forth. And a lot of the times, as you can see in some of the statistics that's in the blog about the college athletes, that it's way more prevalent than you might think. About 1 in 4 college athletes, I believe, engage in gambling activities. So they're gonna have to decide whether following the rules would be the way they want to go, or if money is so important that they need to risk their eligibility, their reputation with the coach, their reputation with their teammates, risk all of that just to gain some money, and they do. The second college athlete we're looking at is let's see, Boston College basketball players and the playing for the mob 30 for 30. Their situation's almost totally different. Maybe it was similar in the beginning in the fact that they're underpaid and they want to make a little bit of money, but the more they got into it, other values and interests started to arise, such as their personal safety, the safety of their friends and family. They had people threatening to injure them, maybe kill them. It was a pretty trying time for those athletes, and they needed to rank their values and interests and act accordingly. So it's a pretty dire situation they were in. And as far as placing these athletes in an ethical group, if you will, of teleontology or deontology, it'd be important to know the situation that they found themselves in. Let's say, for example, a college athlete has a younger baby brother. His mom's having trouble affording diapers, so he's trying to make some money to send home to mom. Maybe the actions aren't morally right, but they satisfy a morally right goal. So therefore the goal outweighs the actions. So now we move on to professional athlete, and the first guy we're going to take a look at is Pete Rose. I'm sure everyone's pretty familiar with Pete's story. Been held out of the Hall of Fame for games he bet on as a player or a manager. I believe he said in a quote that he never betted on games as a player, only as a manager. And the only time he bet on his team was for his team to win. So I guess maybe in his mind he thought he was motivating himself or something to manage better. I don't know what his reasoning would be, but anyhow, he was obviously acting under egoism. He's serving his own self-interest, trying to make money based on his extensive knowledge of the game, his extensive knowledge of his own team. So he at some point you got to take Pete through the value analysis process, and money. I'm not sure he's a professional athlete. It was back in the day, and I'm sure they didn't get paid as much as they do today. But it's hard for me to believe that money was much of an issue for Pete. But maybe it was pride. Maybe he just felt like he knew more about the game than anyone else, and he could benefit from this broken gambling system. Then we've got MLB rules to worry about, which back in the day rules were broken all the time. So I'm sure Pete thought, I'll get away with it, but he did for a long time too. Public image and legacy, I'm sure, are things that never really crossed Pete's mind when he was actually placing the bets. But once news got out that he did, that that legacy and that image was tarnished. So he's been out of the Hall of Fame for many years, and he deserves to be there just based on his performance and his time in the MLB. But we might never see that day. So I'm sure if when Pete very start he first started betting, I'm sure if he had realized that his legacy and that his image would be so muddied up, he probably wouldn't have partaken in the betting. Let's see, our last example is going to be our Oakland Raider relocation to Las Vegas. It's probably our most unique example because it doesn't involve just a single person, and it hasn't even happened yet, so it's completely hypothetical. But what it does do is provide players on that team better accessibility, being in Las Vegas, probably the gambling capital of the world, and being put into this gambling culture. So there's more opportunities for pitfalls. People have just got to keep their values and interests in order and just act accordingly. 'Cause they know if they bet they'll probably be kicked out of the game, and it's hard to think that anything would outweigh that. So, but we can look at this from the owner's viewpoint, as we've talked about in class a couple times. It's a utilitarianism viewpoint, and utilitarian makes ethical decisions based on a projected outcome that would bring about the most happiness to the greatest number of people. That's kind of what the owners and higher ups of the Raiders are doing here. They're taking into account the individuals within the organization and doing what's best for them, what they think is best for them. They're not really taking into account the following that they have in Oakland, the fans they'll potentially lose. They're more worried about what's best for the projection of the team itself, not necessarily for the city of Oakland. So they've got to rank their values and interests just like anybody else, and when it boils down to it, the interests of the organization outweigh that of the community. So we may be seeing a relocation to Las Vegas here very soon. And that's going to kind of do it for our video blog here. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you later.